Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Daring Dialogues. I am your host, Shante Charles. We are on a countdown for this week. Countdown to 100. Can you all believe it? Season 2, 100 episodes. And we're going to hit 100 on Thursday morning. So, Thursday we're going to do some more giveaways. I have a evening gown that I'm going to be giving away. I have a men's dress hat we're going to be giving away, and then there's going to be some other things. So tune in for that if you so desire on Thursday. We're also going to cover the occult on Thursday as well. So good morning to everybody. I hope that you're having a wonderful morning. I hope that you had a fantastic weekend. I know I did. I got some needed rest this weekend and did some planning for some other things I have going on in February, and I am excited. And we are today going to hopefully complete the chapter in The Simplest Way to Change the World, Biblical Hospitality. We've been talking about setting yourself up for success, and we have been tackling some of the fears and some of the excuses that people have for not following through with being hospitable. So we're going to continue to read that, and I think I'm going to finish up the excuses piece and a couple of tools, and hopefully we'll get through this. But I definitely want to share with you all something today on power. So I'm going to start with the power book first. I was in the library a couple weeks ago, and I saw this book, and I didn't know who the person was, but I went over and I looked at the book cover, and I thought, this is interesting. And then I looked in the back of the cover, and I was like, I think this is a guy from a rock group. What is he doing writing about this, right? So, we have our presupposed notions about what people can write about and what they cannot. And so I was about to put the book back on the shelf, and I felt the prompting of the Lord say, check it out. And I was like, really? I don't know if I want to check this out, right? So I went ahead and checked it out, and I actually put off taking a look at it now for about a week. So I finally jumped into this book over the weekend, and OMG. The book is called Gene Simmons on Power, and then he has My Journey Through the Corridors of Power and How You Can Get More Power. And he's actually talking about his life and how he grew up, and turns out that he is Jewish. And he began talking about his schooling and different things like that. But what really impacted me so far about this reading, because I'm actually about 2/3 done, I should finish it this week. I don't agree with everything in his book, but what he has to say about power is so profound and transforming that I'm going to read it, because I think people need to hear what he says about power. So this is him with all of his multi awards and things of that nature. He is the front man from the band Kiss. Now, I'm not into rock music at all or any of that stuff, but obviously Kiss was America's #1 gold record award winning group of all time. And so he's kind of sharing his lessons. He's also talking in this book about modern power players and what he calls the classical power pantheon. But I want to read to you chapter 3 because he makes what he calls a case for power. And I think it's pretty powerful what he says about power. And if you're a believer, you're going to get it. All right. I have no doubt in my mind that you are going to understand the point that he's making about power. And I believe it is a transformative point for people who want to do good in the world and they want to have God's backing. All right. Now, for me, this was interesting because I would not necessarily see somebody as the front runner or the front person of a rock band giving this kind of transformational thinking on power. But again, like I said, I wouldn't have picked up the book myself, but I felt a prompting to pick it up and then finally actually read it. And this was actually very, very transformative. So I'm going to share it with you. And by the way, he quotes a lot of scripture in context in this book, which I found very interesting. And he does make a point of saying that his rock persona is his rock persona. In other words, that is the character that he took on in order to get his power and make his money in the world. So for those of you who are musician aficionados, he actually says a lot about that and the personas that you take on in order to get into those industries. But I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on what he says about the case for power. So that's where we're going to start. It says, let's get serious. It's getting late. It's getting later in your life than you think, but it's never too late to get started. There's a persistent fallacy in our society based on an old, musty way of thinking that power corrupts. This idea has worked its way into our cultural narrative in a way few other things have. Watch any children's movie from the past few decades. Think about Cruella de Vil or other various evil queens from fables and folklore, and you'll know what I mean. It's the same with the classics like Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. You know and hate him, the rich and powerful Scrooge. A pattern begins to emerge, and all of these villains have something in common. They are rich and they are powerful. Often they are Machiavellian in their use of power. But basically, they are relentless, they manipulate to get what they want, and they are ruthless in the pursuit of their goals. This trope is found so often in children's stories, and the message we're sending our younger generation is very clear. Bad people are powerful, and being powerful is bad. Just think about it. The message we're sending is bad people are the ones who are powerful, and being powerful is bad. So then the logical conclusion then becomes, let's not be powerful. Surely everyone will get along better as long as no one gets too powerful. Is this really the lesson above all lessons that we want to teach our children as we prepare them for what awaits in the real world? I submit to you that it is not. We handicap ourselves by equating power with the villains in fiction. Think about that. Now, if you're a believer, hopefully you already understand that God is all powerful. Good morning. That God is all powerful and that all power belongs to God. I hope as a believer, you already understand that it is God that gives you power to get wealth. All right. So as we're reading, as you're thinking about what he's saying, I want you to keep that in mind. Okay. So this is what he says. We handicap ourselves by equating power with the villains in fiction. We do our children a disservice by teaching them to shun power. We deny them the power to seize their dreams. What good is the hero after all without the power to defeat the villain? What good could Superman do without his powers? How effective could Batman be without his fortune, his training, or his gadgets? In this book, I intend to make the case for power, what it is, including and beyond money, and why it matters to everybody, even the people who claim that it corrupts. So much of our popular mythology focuses on the negative aspects of power that we forget that gaining power is perhaps the only way to enable ourselves to make a difference in our lives and the lives of others. So let's be clear. Power is a tool, neither good nor bad. And just because a tool can be abused does not mean that we shouldn't use it. Airlines tell us to secure our own oxygen mask before assisting others, even our children. Why? Is it because selfishness in the face of danger is good? Of course not. It's because this is not a moral argument, but a pragmatic one. We are no good to our children if we cannot breathe ourselves. You must be in a position of power if you're going to make a difference to those without power. And when he said that, the person that immediately came to mind for me in scripture was Joseph. All right. If Joseph would not have been in a position of power, he would not have been able to make a difference in the lives of those without the power, including his own family. All right. So he says, people will rail against greed, against caring about power and money. Some things are more important than money, they say. But what are those things? Being kind to others, family, friends, so be it. But our family, our loved ones, the people we want to protect and take care of, all live in the real world. And in this real world where we all live, we must have money and currency in order to take care of our families. You must first have money before you can give it to charity. Hello, somebody. You must have the power and the money to feed your loved ones, to help your friends. And the more money you have, the more you can give, the better your life and the lives of your loved ones can become. The man who gives away his only dollar is virtuous and a virtuous soul indeed. But compared with the rich and powerful CEO who gives away 500 million or her 5 billion, he is not making much of a difference, no matter how noble his intentions are. So he's talking about the fact that you have to separate nobility from your ability. Let me say that again. You have to separate nobility from your ability. All right? So when your ability increases, you can do more nobility in your actions. All right? And this is especially important for the godly to understand. Godly people. All right? He says the CEO may be greedier and power obsessed. Indeed, the CEO might be a grotesque person in their personal life, selfish and vain. But at the end of the day, they might be able to feed and clothe more people with their contribution. This is not the romantic ideal we've grown used to. It's not poor, powerless Aladdin defeating the rich, evil Jafar. Incidentally, Aladdin becomes rich at the end of the story, does he not? But this is reality because in the real world, power matters. Consequences matter, not intentions. A good person without power won't accomplish much, no matter his intentions or his virtue. I hope y'all are hearing that. Power moves mountains when mountains, keyword, need to be moved. The quote at the beginning of this chapter speaks to my point. For those of us who haven't taken Philosophy 101, Friedrich Nietzsche was a German philosopher in the 1800s. with a peculiar point of view on the subject of power and its relationship to morality. Often he was fairly cold with his criticism, and his unflinching views made a lot of people queasy and still do. He's been interpreted, criticized, and misinterpreted countless times over the decades. But he also tried to understand and explain the origins of what holds us back from achieving power. What is basically, get this, the worship of weakness. When you worship weakness, it restrains you from attaining power that you can use to help someone else. That is the idea that humility and submission are good, and strength, materialism, and ruthlessness are evil. When you go throughout scripture, all right, and you look at the patriarchs, you clearly see that this is a false dichotomy that has been set up. All right. If you study the patriarchs in scripture, they were both, some of them were humble. They were submitted to God. Okay. And they also had strength. And they also had goods or materialism. They had wealth. They had goods. And some of them had to be very concise with following God's orders. So it's not, what he's talking about here, it's not a if, it's not an and or. Okay? It's not a if or, it's a and but. You can be humble and you can have goods. That's the point he's making. But he was saying that, again, that people have tapped into the worship of weakness, meaning that if you're poor and if you're humble and if you're submissive, then you are the good person, and that you can't be humble and wealthy, because that's what the world says. The world says if you have strength, if you have materialism, if you're wealthy, then there's something evil about you. If I'm wrong, somebody let me know. All right. And we're actually seeing examples of this in our culture, because the leaders who are doing good and the leaders who are honoring God and who are also wealthy, those are the ones that get attacked. Those are the ones that people start saying, what are they doing with all that wealth? They don't need to have that, right? Okay. But the case he's making is, why would you just only want evil people to have power? Why would you only want evil people to have wealth? Think about it. They're evil. So are they going to do the right thing with the wealth and the power that they have? All right. Friedrich Nietzsche hypothesized that at some point in our history, the weak decided that they disliked the strong and disliked getting the short end of every stick. The old way of dealing with this would have been to find a way to become powerful, to improve yourself in order to join the ranks of the strong. Cavemen, Vikings, all of our big muscle warrior ancestors throughout early history shared this kind of ambition. The heroes of old were not seen as saints and charitable souls. They were Beowulf, Heracles, Gilgamesh, etc. However, Nietzsche hypothesized that the weak found another way to ease their own suffering by making it unacceptable and undesirable to be amongst the strong. So rather than take the road of, I'm going to improve, I'm going to increase, they decided to say that being strong was unacceptable, being powerful was unacceptable and undesirable, and they began to rebel and to push against that notion of being amongst the strong. They wanted to make the strong feel shame for enjoying their power. All right? They wanted to make the strong feel shame for enjoying their power. Instead of raising themselves up to become powerful, they shamed those with power into purposefully lowering themselves. They shamed power itself. This, in my view, was throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, it is, of course, possible for a tyrant to take their power, to run with it, and abuse it. We actually see that happening with our government. We have people in power who are now becoming tyrannical, who are now not caring for their fellow man, who are simply taking their money, taking their tax breaks, and running with them, right? So it's possible that people can abuse power. Power can be abused by anyone, good, evil, and like many, somewhere in between. But that's not what I'm talking about. We forget that Nietzsche's arguments are by definition amoral. He himself did not believe that there were such things as moral facts. He was simply trying to describe the world as he saw it. This book is about pragmatism and overcoming flawed narratives that hold us back. So, people who do great good, listen, and people who do great evil have one crucial thing in common. People who do great good and people who do great evil have one thing in common, and that is greatness. I am not arguing that vile human beings like Hitler are good for humanity. They are not. But the simple fact exists that power is out there, and some will take it and some will not. Why not grab power for those who are the good guys? What keeps the human race evolving so that it can develop ideas like compassion, art, humility, and political correctness? The main driving force in human society is the will to power. In other words, seizing power works. Being afraid of power, shunning power, actually stunts your growth. So, what gets the job done? Strength and power gets the job done. This dynamic has been playing out since prehistoric times. The caveman who was strong enough to bring home the most meat got the girl. That is still true today, I might add. The more power and money the male of the species has, the more access he has, the more he has access to in life. These are concepts from the days before political correctness existed. Nature and reality didn't exist to conform to our feelings. Instead of asking me to conform to your sensitivities, become more powerful than I am and make your vision of life dominant. Instead of criticizing those who hold views you find unacceptable, defeat them. Make your own strength and power undeniable. Might does not make right, but might makes things possible. It makes things happen whether or not they are right. I argue that this idea, the will to power, is still just as useful today as it was in prehistory, albeit with less club swinging and mammoth skinning. However much we like to pretend that we've moved past a survival of the fittest mentality, it is still a jungle out here. Fighting to survive, to overcome, to achieve is still necessary in our world. So we must will ourselves to power if we are to earn a place where we have the luxury to care about things like compassion and art. Power is an inconvenient truth, a necessity, whether we like to admit it or not. To throw a little more philosophy in, it is my opinion that if you can stand in front of me in clean clothes, knowing how to read, with food in your belly, and say things like, I don't care about money, or power corrupts, you are able to do so only because you have lived a sheltered life. Frankly, you are lucky or blessed to be standing on the backs of those who have power without even realizing it. In 1943, a psychologist named Abraham Maslow proposed a theory called the hierarchy of needs. Everybody, if you've taken psychology or if you've taken any basic college courses, and I think they do this in high school in one of the science courses, they talk about the hierarchy of needs. The basic idea was that there is an order in which people can worry about things they need to survive and flourish first. All right. And he put the hierarchy of needs in the form of a pyramid. At the base of the pyramid are what are called physiological needs. In other words, the needs that all of us have, right? So if you've seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I think he has about 4 or 5 tiers to it, all right? It looks like this, okay? And the things that every one of us has, from kings to beggars, needs simply to stay alive, okay? So those are your basic needs, like air, food, water. That's on the bottom of the pyramid, because they basically say without those needs being met, you can't do anything else. One can only wait until death comes. Air, food, water. Whether you are poor or rich, everybody needs those. You can't accomplish anything without those needs first being fulfilled. In the world we currently live in, this includes money, because you need money to buy food and to access clean water and air many times. You have countries now that are actually selling bottles of air. All right? Google it if you don't believe it. They're selling clean air in bottles because some countries' atmosphere is so polluted that people are willing to buy fresh air to breathe it in. Air for sale. All right? So, living off the grid is possible, and some people do go out into the woods and try to live off the land, but there are several states that is now illegal to do. You cannot live off the grid in several states. Let's keep going. In this scenario, if your farm fails, if you don't catch any fish though, if you fail as a hunter, you die. So when your basic physical needs are not met, these are the foremost things on your mind. No other concerns can possibly exist when you are starving to death or dying of thirst. And no other goals can be met without first meeting the needs of physiology. All right? Your food, your air, your water. The next level of Maslow's hierarchy is safety. Safety. All right? This is where things like shelter, medicine, physical security, and other ways to maintain health and protect from injury reside. Along with money, these things also require a society or system around you that allows you to purchase them, such as health care. That's money and power. Many in the West, especially in European countries, argue that health care should be a public, socialized commodity. Whether you agree with this and whether your health care is private or public, power and money are still necessary to pay for medicine and to fund the healthcare system. And of course, there is the prehistoric concept of safety, safety from attack and safety from predators. This obviously requires some physical power or power to defend oneself or to make weapons. In modern society, this means paying your taxes so a police force can be funded, perhaps ponying up for a security system in your own home. When you are fed but not safe, it is hard to think of much else. Lost in the woods, in a bad part of town, under attack, being pursued by a predator, these are all urgent crises that begin to dominate the mind until they are resolved. When you are not safe, safety becomes your life's goal until it is met. You are not available to worry about anything else. Once you are fed and safe, you move toward the more familiar stuff that exists in the developed world, what most people will recognize as quote unquote the rest of their lives. All right. So the next level of the pyramid is what we call love and belonging. Love and belonging. So as you go up the pyramid, all right, you're not worrying about your basic needs. You're not worrying about your safety. So now your mind is a little more open to worry about love and belonging. All right? Because if I'm down here, I can't breathe, I'm starving, and I have no water, I don't have time to worry about love and belonging. I'm trying to survive. Okay? This is how it goes. So the next level of the pyramid is love and belonging. You might call this the need for the other, someone to love, sexually or non-sexually, family, friends, a tribe of some kind. A curious thing happens when you reach this level. You begin to forget that this need is not as important as the other two. It is my opinion that some people at this level begin to lack the proper perspective on life. These are the people who will say things like, money is not that important, or my significant other is important. This to me makes very little sense, since money and power acquire things that cost money and is what allows for your loved ones to exist in safety and comfort. People who are not starving, often feel the need to characterize their lives as a battle between materials and what is really important. These people forget that there is a lot of money that goes into maintaining a spouse, a family, and a tribe. This, by my interpretation, is what Nietzsche calls the inversion of values, and it has led into the modern era. Instead of thinking of wealth and power as the very means to keep your family alive, we say that these two ideas are separate and mutually exclusive. In other words, the dad who works too much becomes a cliche, even in many films, especially in holiday movies around Christmas time. We don't have to name all of the movies where this becomes a major running theme, such as the movie Elf, where Will Ferrell is one of them, but they are countless. These stories end with the dad learning a valuable lesson and telling his work buddies and bosses to shove it. Instead of doing this very important work, he says, I'm going to spend time with my family. But when you look at this as a hierarchy of needs, you realize that you cannot compromise your career because your career is helping you to meet the needs of your family. This fact won't be clear until the first two levels in the hierarchy are compromised by something like a cancer diagnosis. Spending time with the family is a very kind thing for a father to do, but working through the holidays sometimes so that when illness strikes, a father has the money, the resources, and the power at his disposal to get the best doctors and the best medicine is actually a better approach. He's not forsaking one for the other. I don't know about you, but I want to make sure the people I love not only feel good and feel loved, but are first and foremost healthy, safe, fed, clothed, and housed. The only reasonable response to, Dad, you work too much, should be, I work exactly hard enough so that I can take care of your safety and your security. The next level of Maslow's pyramid is characterized by self-esteem and self-respect. Self-esteem and self-respect. So we're moving up the pyramid. We find the same amnesia here as well. You often hear people complain about working a dead-end job, or that their job has nothing to do with their passion and is just for money. My response to that often is, well, yeah, because money feeds you and enables you to provide for your basic needs. And yet someone with clothes on their back, a home, food in their belly will actually complain that their job does not excite them or isn't making them feel good about themselves. Their boss is mean to them when they shirk their responsibilities. The work is hard. They feel inferior to people who do better than they do or who make more money or accomplish more. They desire fame, fortune, and success, and ironically fall into depression and develop inferiority complexes because of their desires. They begin to resent those who are better off, and they resent the system that creates their difficulties. People then say that the problem is that these people care about the wrong things, like money, power, and success. Instead of working harder and raising oneself to achieve their goals, they fall into self-pity and criticizing those who are better off, as if those people did not work hard to earn their place. If you widen this perspective a little by, say, dropping someone off in the middle of a place where they have no access to food, no access to water, no access to shelter, we would probably find that these concerns disappear almost immediately. The person who has no job, the person who has no access to income at all, would happily trade places with the person who complains that their boss is mean or that they feel unfulfilled. Most people lack this macro perspective and get caught up in what makes them feel comfortable or uncomfortable in the moment. Instead of self-motivating by dwelling on the power they already possess or how far they've come and how lucky they are to be fed and safe, they choose to sulk and dwell on how much better off other people are. This prevents them from seizing any further power for themselves. The final and highest stage on the pyramid is what we call self-actualization. And I want to say that a whole lot of people, especially when you talk about motivational speakers, you talk about coaches, a lot of motivational speakers and coaches are actually up there. They actually talk to people from the perspective of self-actualization, while a lot of the people under them or who are paying for them are actually struggling to survive all the way down here. What am I saying? I'm saying that there are a lot of people who are down here, okay, who give money to people who are up here. In other words, they're not on your level. All right? So while they're talking about self-actualization, you are down here like, I need food, water, air, safety. All right? A lot of us are probably in the self-esteem and self-respect area and the love and belonging. There are a lot of people still looking for love and belonging, and they have time to look for love and belonging because hopefully their needs of safety and their physiological needs are being met. All right. But the problem becomes if people are writing books up here and nobody is writing about being here. This is what he is actually doing in his book. He's writing about being here and how you can get here. But there are so many books out that where everybody is writing from this perspective. They're not telling you how they got from just meeting their basic needs to self-actualization. Okay? So, he says in this final piece, the final and highest stage is self-actualization, which is essentially reaching your full potential. Now, how many speakers have we heard say that phrase? How to reach your full potential. But then it becomes a book, or it becomes a teaching, or it becomes a session about the fact that they're already at their potential. They're not necessarily giving you the skills and the tools to move from here to there. Especially in creative industries like writing or music, you'll hear advice like, don't do it for the money. Don't sell out. Better to be a starving artist. This is a false dichotomy for art or for money, meaning that the former is goodness and the latter is just materialism. I've heard this for decades in my industry and from many of my peers. They could not comprehend why I would want to do commercials or sell merchandise or capitalize on what I helped to create with my brand. Aren't you selling out? They would ask. This view is self-limiting. It is a perversion of what self-actualization means, which is the fulfillment of one's full potential. It is often looked at as something in opposition to the baser needs of the pyramid, but it actually cannot be accomplished unless your baser needs are first met and fulfilled many times over. In layman's terms, You won't have time to worry about being a good artist if you have no clean water to drink. Does that make sense? It makes sense to me. You won't have time to worry about things like artistic dignity if you're dying of hunger, or if you have a disease that's causing you to waste away. Why? Because you're too busy worrying about your survival. So you can't get up here, as he's talking about, without having met your basics. Back to the basics. So ask yourself today, are my basic needs being met? Are my basic needs being met? We know as believers, right, that we aren't supposed to harp on our basic needs. We aren't supposed to be consumed by our basic needs. But the reality is, you can't help much of anybody if you yourself are down here struggling for survival. Power is essential to guaranteeing that your most basic needs will never be violated. Worrying about your artistic integrity, worrying about being too materialistic are actually luxuries. These concerns would be absurd if you first didn't have food, water, shelter, medicine, safety, and money. In other words, gaining power, desiring to have the goods, and gathering as much of both as you can is really not about your integrity as an artist. People who warn you about selling out need a reality check. Instead of complaining about those who have power and wealth, they should focus on improving their own lives. Don't look to see what's on someone else's plate, because it is a waste of time. Don't look over your shoulder to see who else is running the race. Just be the best you that you can be, and every day become better than you were before. Worrying about power and money is a need that everyone has, because it makes you a human being and it makes you smart. Over worrying is the concern. By all means, pursue your dreams, but please feed yourself. Make sure you are safe. Feed your loved ones, lest you forget that you are merely blessed to have first world problems like selling out in artistic anxiety. Please, if you have the opportunity to sell something, that means you've actually accomplished something and you have a product and a good that people want. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I sold out. I sell out every night. So now, I'm trying to improve your chances of getting money and power. Remember, money and power should really be going to the good guys who will actually do something virtuous with it in the world. Incidentally, one begets the other. The more power you have, the more money you will have, and vice versa. So I'm going to stop there on this particular piece. But power. I hope that what he said made sense. I think I'm going to read the last 2 pages. Let me do that. And then we'll go into 2 points in the hospitality book. He says this, because I think there's only 2 pages left. Yeah. All right. He says this: get used to saying the words power and money. I need all my faith believers to get used to saying those words. Especially if you plan to have favor this year. Especially if you plan to have increase this year. You cannot be afraid to say power, and money. Get rid of the voice in your head that tells you that it is wrong to talk about power and money. Our culture tells us we're supposed to keep thoughts about money and power to ourselves. But I say, speak these things because it will actually embolden you to do something about your situation instead of being the victim. You have to grab life by the scruff of the neck and make people understand that you are important. I believe one person said you have to teach people how to treat you, and that you won't accept anything less than the most respectful treatment. You will only get the respect that you demand. Take note of those throughout history who demanded respect and saw the results. When I was in my early teens, the great James Brown released the song, "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud." As a teenager who'd always felt insecure, it was moving beyond words. Here was a black man who had likely dealt with more struggle in his life than I ever had, and he was loud and proud. Feeling proud on the inside is one thing, but saying something about it publicly is quite another. Until you stand up and proclaim to the world and yourself that what you deserve and everything that comes with it, until you actually hear the words coming out of your own mouth, you won't fully resonate. So say it loud and say it to yourself every day. Before a boxer steps into the ring, he has to motivate himself. Before a tightrope walker gets on that wire, he better be telling himself things like, I can do this. Before a nervous teenager asks a girl out on a date, he should be looking in the mirror and telling himself the things he's planning to say. Tell yourself, this is powerful. Tell yourself the things that others won't say to you. Some of us know that people know how good we are, or how talented we are, or how capable we are. And people know you're capable and talented, but guess what? They won't tell you. For a whole lot of reasons, all right? But they won't tell you, all right? I say it takes a person who is very confident and strong in their own abilities to be able to compliment somebody else, to be able to tell somebody else what they see in them that is strong and powerful. You need to be confident in your own skills and abilities. Because if you're not, you can become that person who recognizes that there's something good in someone else, but yet because of your insecurities, you won't speak up. You won't compliment them. You won't say what's good about them. All right? So he gives some very powerful advice. Tell yourself the things that others won't say to you. Such as, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I'm excellent at what I do, I am good ground. All right? Tell yourself things that other people may not want to say to you, even though they see it in you. And a lot of people, believe it or not, get stuck, right, in that love and belonging section. They get stuck here. They get stuck here because they're waiting on someone to give them self-esteem. I'm preaching good. I know. They get stuck at love and belonging, and they don't move past that because they're waiting for someone else to give them self-esteem and self-respect. But until you have it for yourself, you're not going to move past love and belonging. So tell yourself the things that others won't say to you. You should be your own greatest cheerleader and motivator. Hello. If you find yourself at home dipping chips and watching yet another football game, get up off of the couch and say it loud. I'm going to do something. Okay? I'm going to do it right now because it will be the only way that you begin to get in touch with your true dreams and desires. Okay? Religious motivation, he says, is similar. Praying by yourself is all well and good, but how much more motivating is it to go into your place of worship and to hear your pastor preach something and then to repeat it back? This is Gene Simmons, y'all, telling y'all to get up and go to your worship service. So yes, power and money are the essentials. Fame is overrated and fleeting. Cool is a moving target, and the public is always fickle, as we have seen in the case of Monique. All right? When you're not hot, you're not hot, and the public will let you know it, and they will let you know it in no uncertain terms that they're not boycotting anything because they don't feel you're popular enough or important enough to boycott on your behalf. This is what people do. All right? But thank goodness Monique has self-esteem, and certainly she has self-respect. All right? So, again, power and money are different. If you learn how to harness them and how to use them wisely, they will last you a lifetime. Let's dispel the idea that power and money corrupt and that they are the root of all evil. Because if you properly interpret that, it says the love, the worship of money is the root of all evil. So he is not encouraging you to worship money. He's not encouraging you to love it. He's encouraging you to understand that you need it in order to operate in this world. And he's encouraging you that if you are a person who is filled with virtue, if you're a person who is godly and you know what to do with money and you're willing to help other people, then pursue and be excellent and gain the power and the money so that you can be the person that's making a positive impact in the world, as opposed to letting power and money fall into the hands of the wicked, because clearly we are all suffering for that. We're all suffering from that. Hello, government shutdown. We're suffering because power and money is now in the hands of evil people, wicked people, people who don't care about other people except themselves and filling and lining their pockets. All right. So instead, he says, let's embrace the idea that money and power are the roots that grow possibilities in life. Somebody needs to write that down. Money and power are the roots that grow possibilities in life. How do we know this? The disciples had taxes to pay. What did Jesus tell them to do? Did he say, skip out on the taxes? He didn't do that. The disciples had taxes to pay. Jesus said, I want you to go fishing. In other words, I want you to go to that thing that you are a professional at. I want you to go into that area that you've already mastered. I want you to go fishing, and I want you to catch a fish, and I want you to open that fish's mouth up, and in that fish's mouth is going to be money. And that money is going to empower you or give you the power to fulfill your obligations in a society that has not received me as Christ. I'm preaching good. So, the disciples did not say abracadabra. The disciples had to go fishing. They had to go fishing. They had to pull up a fish at the command of their Savior. And in the mouth of that fish was exactly what Christ told them they would find to meet their earthly obligations. Money and power are the roots that grow all other possibilities. Power, he says, has made my dreams come true, provided a wonderful life for my family, allowed me to be charitable to people I have never met, and so much more than I ever could have as a poor kid living in Israel and then moving to New York. Power made it possible. Who does power belong to? Power belongs to God. Who gives power to get wealth? God does. All right? So if you're the person saying, I don't want power, then this broadcast was not for you. If you're the person saying, I don't need money, this broadcast was not for you. All right. But for those of us who understand that power and money will enable us to help more people, will enable us to get some people out of the clutches of the wicked one, this broadcast was for you. All right. So, I thank you for your time and attention today. I'm not going to go ahead and go into the biblical hospitality book. I will save that for season 3, which we will start season 3 February 1st as we complete this week. Remember, on Thursday is our episode 100, and it's going to be our time of giveaway. All right. So I hope that you learned something today about power and money. As I said, when I read it, it helped me to put into perspective some things that I already knew, but this was something that I needed to hear in order to really embrace what God is about to do in my life. And if you have expectations for what God is about to do in your life for 2018, if you have expectations about how God is going to blow your mind, then your perspective on receiving wealth will have to change. I'm going to say that one more time. If you are going to receive increase in 2018, your perspective on increase is going to have to change. If you have been thinking in your mind that it is evil to have money, that having money will make you a bad person, your perspective is going to have to change. Because you're going to need to know what to do with the increase that is coming into your life. All right. So I want to thank you for your time and attention. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So please go out and be light. Tomorrow, we're going to be back talking about immigration and the black elite. All right. Immigration and the black elite. All right. So anybody have any comments you want to add to today's broadcast? Remember, if you're not in the chat, if you follow me, I'm going and looking at those who are following me. If you have no image, you have no picture, you have no videos, I'm going to assume that you are a troll account, and I'm probably going to delete you. All right. So I want to be able to follow people back, but I can't follow you back if your account looks suspect. All right. So again, thank you all for your time and attention. I want to say good morning again to everyone who has tuned in, and I hope that you have a great, fabulous, fantastic Monday. Take care, and God bless. Again, thank you all for tuning in on our YouTube channel. Take care, and God bless.